What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about these new $1 million surveillance trucks that U.S. police forces have just bought. Now, these aren't U.S. based trucks. These are actually Israeli spy trucks. Now, let's take a look at this article, and I have several other articles to kind of break down what we're looking at here. So this is just a picture, a random picture of a police transport vehicle. This is not what it is. It's actually Chevy Tahoes, and they're actually going to be outfitted with IMSI catchers, otherwise commonly referred to as Stingrays, Kingfisher, Hailstorm. You've heard of these. Dirt boxes also is another name for a product that offers these. Now, what do these do? Well, what they do is they create a fake cell tower. So what you have here is a diagram just kind of showing what it operates. So these trucks are outfitted with cell site simulators. IMSI catchers, same thing. And what it is you have all the phones in the area, and this can actually capture 10,000 in some cases. Many thousands. All depends on what product we're talking about. But FalcoNet is this Israeli product from a company called Cognite. We're going to be taking a closer look at some of the controversies that are surrounding this company as well. Very interesting, especially when we see the NDAA, this National Defense Authorization Act, which is something that's now being passed in the U.S. to try and merge the U.S. military-industrial complex with the Israeli military-industrial complex. Now, a lot of people are saying that it's because Israel has such special technology, but personally, I believe, my personal opinion, that it is a heavy result of lobbying. And it's just absolutely crazy that this continues. This thing looks like it could pass. This thing that should never pass. You should never have foreign entanglements. Even the founding of the U.S. was all about avoiding foreign entanglements. And anyway, let's get back to the subject at hand. So FalcoNet is the IMSI catcher setup that's going to come with this, and I'm going to show you some IMSI catcher setups and what they're capable of as well today. So we're going to be taking a look through all this, and of course, I always try to give a little bit of hope at the end of the video. So we're going to be talking about some potential thoughts on potential solutions into the future for people to protect themselves from unethical, illegal surveillance, which warrantless surveillance in the U.S. at least is illegal. It is unconstitutional, and the Constitution never made any exceptions for national security, so that is all just subversion, in my opinion. So we're taking a look at these cars equipped with this controversial surveillance hardware. It's an Israeli company. Once again, I do want to mention that because there's actually Israel, the Defense Intelligence Agency in the U.S. actually just said that we have seen levels of spying. According to the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, the levels of spying are near record setting at this current time period, and it makes some sense. You know, Israel has a vested interest in the conflict with Iran, so the Iran conflict is something that they're heavily interested in, and in fact, they did find, according to mainstream sources, that they believe that Israel was spying on some of the negotiators for the Iran war on the U.S. side, so people like Steve Witkoff and the like. Now, what is this company that's going to be outfitting police cars in the U.S.? At least, I know at least two states right off the bat. I know Florida and Texas just made a big purchase for over $4 million for 4 trucks. Now, the majority of that funding wasn't even for the truck. The majority of that funding, in fact, it said something like $600,000 of it was for the vehicles themselves, and the rest was for all the surveillance equipment. And this company is not just involved in surveillance hardware. This company also does something called predictive policing, something I have talked about on this channel. Now, what's controversial about this particular company, it's actually connected to Verint. So Verint is something, and then there's Neris, which is a different company. But Verint has handled the telecom intercepts for companies like AT&T and Verizon for the U.S., of course. Now, what's interesting about that is, of course, you know, legally, They need a warrant to spy on Americans. At least American government needs a warrant. And Norris, that's an interesting company as well. That actually was, if you heard the rumors of the secret room in the AT&T building, well, actually in some mainstream reporting, we heard of whistleblowers. One whistleblower, William Binney, who worked for the NSA, he was actually the technical director over thousands of employees. And what he said about Norris was, and this is his words, not mine, this is what he claims. He claims that they created a program called Thin Thread and some other development for the NSA. And that in creating that, what was interesting is, according to him, his bosses rejected the U.S. government taxpayer-funded program. But then, somehow, according to William Binney, he says that it was resold back to the U.S. taxpayers after the taxpayers funded the development of an identical program from Norris. Controversial things that's linked to this police surveillance van, or surveillance Chevy Tahoes, is that apparently they were involved in a deal, according to Wikipedia, so just alleged stuff here for the moment, before the military coup took over Myanmar. The country made a deal with Cognite, and in order to get telecom interception equipment. And that would allow them to, of course, monitor any dissidents, any activists, protesters. And in fact, it was even something that was apparently illegal, even to Israel. So Israel's Supreme Court ruled that they weren't even allowed to export defense to Myanmar following 2017 Supreme Court ruling. But it sounds like, according to this claim at least, that a month before the Myanmar military took over and overthrew a democratically elected government, that they had a deal with Cognite. Well, Cognite doesn't just do surveillance hardware. They also do predictive policing. Now, what is that? Well, this is their actual website, so let's take a look at that, because that's always good to get some insights. So, data collection and preparation. So it talks about how it gets all of this digital evidence to try and predict who could be a future criminal, or who may be a reoffender in the future, or maybe even it's just where a crime is likely to occur. Now, this says they use surveillance feeds, which is, of course, interestingly enough, they're putting surveillance feeds, according to the IMSI catchers, right in the truck. And then they also specialize in predictive policing, also going off social media. Now, here's another interesting little tidbit for you. Well, another criticism is Meta, Facebook, actually removed 100 accounts attributed to the Cognite company. And they're stating that their tools could be used to operate networks of fake accounts across social media. So, makes you wonder, and it is a known fact that investigators of various types, whether it's an open source investigator or a private investigator trying to look into, let's say, a cheating spouse, they can set up a fake profile and try to interact, and of course, they would want a friend request any private profiles. Now, I'm just spitballing on this. I'm talking about what a private investigator may do, and I can only imagine what this particular company may do with all the fake accounts. According to Meta, at least, they removed 100 accounts that they were saying could create networks of fake accounts across social media. Now, another thing that we're seeing is a lot of fake accounts that create a false sense of support in various political ideologies. So that's another thing that we know is happening right now. I mean, you go way back to Cambridge Analytica back in 2016 era. That was going on then, and it was going on before that. And in fact, it was going on even before that in military circles and defense, especially in populations where war was occurring. So in order to create the narratives, to create a picture in the minds of people of what is being supported by different things. Now, I'm not claiming at all that's what this company is involved in, not at all. Just saying that fake accounts has been used for a variety of purposes over the years. Now, you can see their modeling and their predictive policing little layout here on how they put it all together to try and generate reliable investigative insights to try and identify crime patterns, suspect behaviors, high-risk locations. Nothing wrong with that. High-risk locations, I mean, if you want people to be aware, of course, if they're in a dangerous area, I mean, you got to use analytics for those kinds of things. So this is not me saying that everything is bad, but more so, how is it applied? How is it used in practice? And hopefully it's used responsibly, but regardless, of course, I do have a serious concern with mass surveillance, as you can tell by my 10 years of dedication to this channel. And we could take a look over here at the military coup just to see what occurred about a month after a contract with that company. So a democratically elected government, they were deposed by the military. And this was after a contract with this company. Not saying this company knew anything about it. They probably didn't. Because even in that world of intelligence and everything like that, it's usually pretty compartmentalized, pretty need to know. So maybe they didn't know what they were selling for. And maybe their product wasn't even used in this coup. I'm not sure, but it's interesting the timing of it. So they overthrew, or at least this military in Myanmar overthrew their democratically elected government. So the people's popular support was overthrown by a military. And that is something that can always happen. I don't want to say anywhere, but it's something that people just need to be aware of, that those kinds of things can happen. So then you can also see this article here, Justice for Myanmar, where they actually talk about the company a bit, about their provision for that lawful interception equipment. So lawful interception equipment is basically just surveillance equipment for either law enforcement or intelligence services to justify under national security, of course. And maybe there's sometimes valid things. I do believe that warrants, of course, should be required, but that's just what's constitutional. So it goes down here with the coup attempt, which actually, and it says that the junta, the military, has scaled up their electronic surveillance to track the location of activists and journalists. So if you appreciate knowing anything about the world, if you appreciate anything in the world, you should care about journalism. You should care about journalists, and that's another reason that I believe privacy and anonymity technology is so important, because without it, we would not have what we have today, with the free flow of information, with access to information, with the reporting, the whistleblowers. Everything relies on this kind of technology. Now, of course, this spyware deal that I was just talking about, another article on the same kind of thing. A lot of human rights concerns on there. So let's talk a little more about what type of this hardware really is. What does it do? It can identify the information about the device, like the IMSI, the International Mobile Subscriber Identity Number, and of course metadata about the calls, like who you're dialing, the duration of the call, intercept the contents of your SMS text messages and your voice calls, your normal voice calls. Obviously, this doesn't apply to things like Signal. But you should also be wary if your Signal messages aren't going through. There's another thing that could happen with one of these, is it could actually block the data with the right hardware. That could actually, take over the data aspect, because not all IMSI catchers are the same. Some will work only to identify and track. Other ones will go deeper and attempt to intercept the contents of SMS messages and voice calls. And if they can do that, there's a really good chance that they can also block any connections that you may be making to Signal servers. So be aware of that. Also be aware that at the top of your phone, you're going to see something like 5G. You're going to see your Signal. It's going to tell you what kind of generation of cellular you're on at that moment. So one thing to look out for ethical reasons, that you didn't sign up for this, that this is not the world you want to live in necessarily. And maybe it is. If you're an investor in the companies here, I don't doubt that you support it. But I don't. I think that, if you're going to use surveillance, it should require a warrant at all times. There should be no other surveillance. Of course, there does need to be some level of justice out there. But it's important to protect the innocent more than it is to catch one bad guy. So that is why you need a warrant, because these types of devices, they affect everyone. They don't just affect the suspect. They are connecting all of the phones in the area. So your phone gets taken over too if it's one of those more serious IMSI catchers, one of the more active versions. So it can intercept data usage such as the websites visited, and obviously then it can control the traffic as well, which, like I said, if you're unable to transmit your signal messages, that could be a trick. Here's just my random thought. There can be a trick that could be implemented, and maybe I'm giving ideas to some of these companies, that you could block signal to force someone to send a regular text message. At least in some cases, in fact a lot of cases, people's natural reaction if signal doesn't go through is to then send an SMS text message. So that could be one technique that could be in use, maybe, possibly. But sometimes they'll use a downgrade attack, as it mentions here. So there's a lot less security when you're on the older generations of cellular. Now, my thought is that there's a reason that interception is possible on all of these generations. And I don't think it's unfixable. I think that it's not been overlooked. I think there's a real purpose in this stuff, because obviously there's also intelligence agencies also rely on this type of stuff. In fact, here's another interesting thing. We saw during the last Trump presidency, at least, I don't remember the year, but I do remember they found IMSI catchers that were linked, allegedly, according to mainstream sources, they were linked to Israel, they believed. And I think that's interesting. They found them near the White House. Now, it wasn't the first time. There's been years past that they've actually caught people sneaking through the vents in government buildings to install interception equipment. And there's some interesting things about the current prime minister over there, Netanyahu, where an Israeli paper, one of the biggest ones, Times of Israel, actually offered the Lewinsky tapes in return for Jonathan Pollard, one of the most dangerous spies to the U.S. in history, that gave up a lot of secrets. So it's quite interesting that we're seeing all this come together at a time where we're also seeing this combined military-industrial complex attempt. And in fact, there's even more about the prime minister over there who claims credit for it. He says he wants to wean off of the $3 or so billion that are offered in military equipment. And he wants to do that by creating a partnership with the U.S. military-industrial complex, which means also the most secretive, the most sensitive technology development would then be shared. And I'm not here to bash Israel. That's not what I'm doing today. I'm just covering current events in the context of what's happening with these purchases and this expansion, this mass expansion of surveillance equipment, which a lot of it does happen to be Israeli in origin. Things like Pegasus, things like Celebrate, all of those, they're Israeli in origin. And now the Falconet and the Cognite stuff as well. So we can see also where they sell these types of things. And it also mentions some details on this site, which also sells them. So they have LTE, GSM, which is obviously an older generation, to downgrade to the GSM spectrum. And it talks about the capabilities on their product here as well. So you can see what this particular product offers you. Now you have an LTE interceptor, which is something that is commonly referred to as Hailstorm. Oh, they can experiment in an ethical way. Of course, you got to put that there. How to intercept, which isn't just monitoring, which is interception, things like SMS calls, over regular calls, not signal calls, but regular calls. Then we can also see another page here where they're selling different equipment. This is also regarding cellular, the decryptor, which is about the encryption, of course. And then you have another GSM interceptor, passive GSM interceptor, and a lot of these places tout their passive interceptors, so things that aren't going to do a downgrade attack or any form of jamming would then use more passive. So an active one might try and knock you down a generation for weaker security so that it could do more types of interception more easily. But how else might your phone connect? Well, one of the ways, and here's the decryptor product here. So I'm not recommending these websites, not at all. I have not verified them. I have not used them. I did not buy any of their products. So these could be illegitimate. I'm just letting you know. I'm making you warn right away not to order from these sites unless you're familiar with them. Here's another one. And I do appreciate that they have a quote from the Sneakers movie, if you're not familiar with that. It's a hacker classic. It's not about who's got the most bullets. It's about who controls the information. And then it shows some locked-in targets here on how their IMSI catchers may work. And then you have a 3G, 4G, and 5G cellular interceptor here. Passive real-time monitoring that can intercept the voice and text SMS. So you can see that it doesn't always rely on a downgrade attack. Doesn't always. Sometimes it may rely on things and some of the vulnerabilities in roaming or something else. But it all depends, really. It all depends. But if your phone is being bounced around different generations suddenly and you haven't driven miles, if you're still in the same place, that's a good sign. If your battery is draining excessively fast, these things can use a lot of battery life. And how are they going to force your phone to connect? Well, another way they can force your phone to connect outside of a denial of service type thing is to output a stronger signal. So what you'll have is the cell towers nearby will have a signal like this, but theirs will be a signal like this. So your phone is always looking for the strongest signal, so it's going to automatically connect to that stuff. Now, I do want to talk now about a potential solution. Now, over here at the EFF, they do some great work. Always recommend supporting them. And they have Ray Hunter here. And this is something I'm considering actually putting together on the channel. So stay tuned. That's a possibility coming forward. I'm actually shopping for the stuff right now. Just seeing, I haven't bought anything yet, but appreciate all the members. Thank you guys for your support. Anyone who buys coffee, supports the channel, really means a lot. And I do use the funds to buy things that end up coming on the channel, so that is something I'm looking at next, is maybe a Ray Hunter. So what this does is it can help you detect an IMSI catcher. And what's great about this is it's a collaborative effort. So people are sharing information. And they mentioned that they'd be interested in PCAP data, things like Wireshark, that could help to detect the ways that exploits are happening. So that is very cool to see. And we can see a picture of one, I think, down here. And how it, and yeah, you can get the hardware. You do want to have a SIM card, though. I do want to mention that. I don't see that mentioned here. But you want to get a SIM card, and an activated one is likely to work out better, but it says it's not required. However, they said they're still not yet sure if they may gain more insights from an activated SIM card. So I do recommend an activated one. And this is how Ray Hunter works. It intercepts, stores, and analyzes the control traffic between the mobile hotspot and the cell tower to which it's connected. So you can, and hopefully it still works as a access point, so that's basically what it is. You're taking the hardware, this hardware here, which is like a hotspot, a cellular hotspot. And what that does is it then monitors and detects anomalies in the cellular towers, which can detect an IMSI catcher. So pretty cool. All you gotta do is get the hardware, then you download the package, unzip it, plug it into your computer, and then run the install script. So yeah, I really think I'm gonna set one of these up. So stay tuned for that, guys. Hope you liked today's video. Just wanted to cover this this new Israeli spy trucks that we're gonna have going around the U.S., which is quite nice, isn't it? Quite nice. You know I love it. I'm sure you're excited to have these spy trucks running around. Not that they haven't existed before. Let's at least be balanced here. There have been IMSI catchers in law enforcement vehicles and possibly even some gray area level private investigators. So this is not a new thing. It's not all being blamed on Israel. This is something that they were already looking for, but I guarantee you there was some heavy efforts to market this particular truck. Let me know what you guys think. They do want to collect some empirical data on Ray Hunter, so if you do put one together through network traffic captures and PCAPs about what kinds of exploits these cell site simulators CSS are actually using in the wild, so this can help research for better defenses. So this is really cool. Really cool. Encourage people to get involved with this. I'm going to aim for it. I think I'll be able to buy one. I haven't done the shopping yet, but I'm going to take a look around. So guys, like the video, share it, help support the channel. Share the video, supports the channel. It really helps get the information out there, and people need to be aware of what is going on and what kind of technology is subverting your phone's connection. And we don't know the capabilities. It could intercept call, it could intercept SMS text. I'm not claiming that, but I'm saying that there is capability to do so. So let me know what you think in the comments. Are you excited about these new surveillance vehicles as much as I am? I'd love to know your thoughts below, and I'll see you guys soon in another video on how to protect your security and privacy.